Hey, welcome everybody. This is Matt Connarton Unleashed. This is, of course, the podcast only edition, which we also affectionately refer to as MCU AF. Because this is strictly online, we are completely unencumbered and uncensored and truly unleashed on this version of the program. And of course, Jenny is with me as always.
Present and accounted for.
And joining us for his first time on the show, Brandon LeMay is here. Hi, Brandon.
Howdy.
So welcome. And for those of you who are streaming the show live, welcome. I will have the chat room open if you'd like to chime in. Of course, most people will get the podcast version of the show, which we will, of course, be including in the podcast feed. So, of course, as always, you can get Matt Connarton Unleashed on your podcast platform of choice, or go to mattconnerton.com for the podcast. But if you are joining us live, we didn't really do much to promote this ahead of time. This is a little bit spontaneous. So welcome. And you are invited to participate in the chat room. But Brandon, so your first time on the show. Jenny and I, of course, have known you for a bit now, at least a couple years, right? Especially, Jenny, of course, knows you better than I do. But it's been how long has it been? It's been at least a few years, right?
Yeah, I think it definitely has been. Because I met Jen through my work as an organizer for Rights and Democracy.
Okay.
Yeah, and it feels like I've known Jen for a while, but also not that long either.
Yeah. So Brandon, who are you and what do you do? Let's give our listeners and viewers some background on you.
Yeah. So I was born and raised here in Manchester, New Hampshire. I am a product of the public school system here. I went to Plymouth State University where I studied political science and minored in French. And that's about that time that I got involved in politics. Because at the time, this is around like 2010, actually, sorry, 2012 now at this point, 2011. And there was a huge effort to defund the university system. And I don't know if either of you are aware of this, but New Hampshire college students graduate with some of the most debt at public universities in the country.
I didn't know that, but it doesn't actually surprise me either.
yeah, we are like routinely like 48th, 49th, 50th in terms of like average student debt. And a lot of that is because we just don't fund public institutions in the state like we do in a lot of our surrounding states as well. So I was political before that. I grew up in a union household. My first direct action was standing at a picket line when I was 4 years old. And actually, Bernie Sanders was huge in helping to end that strike at the time. So my dad was part of the IBEW 2320. They had a bunch of members in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. And so that's when I really learned about the value of leveraging, the power that elected officials have. And in that case, Bernie Sanders was using his soft power as a senator. Actually, I don't think he's even senator at that time. But anyway, as a public elected official, Bernie Sanders was able to, use his leverage because the unions had backed Bernie, and now it was time for Bernie to back the union. And he was able to help put pressure and to have management sign the contract that led me and my family to have all the things that we need in life. So I learned some early political lessons, as a kid, but again, became really charged in college because then, my own well-being was at stake here because, I was working 30 hours a week working at the grocery store, and I still graduated with tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And it was clear to me that we needed to invest more in our university systems, not less. So became involved, with the college Democrats at the time. I became an organizer on the New Hampshire Democratic Coordinated campaign. And then I would say more recently in my career, I've gone more towards like the nonpartisan issue advocacy groups. And I tend to find that work a lot more fulfilling.
So where are you now in terms of what you're doing and your activism, your advocacy, and groups that you're involved in, and the causes that you're involved in that matter the most to you, and that you feel are the most pressing?
Yeah. So like in my time as an organizer at Rights and Democracy, I originally had started in housing issues. I was actually knocking doors not too far, from your neighborhood actually, because there were out-of-state landlords coming in, buying up these multi-family homes from, these previously, you'd have like a mom and pop, on the first floor, rent out, second, third floor. Now they start to retire and they want to cash in on their investment. So there was this guy who was basically coming in with all this money that was financed in New York City. They were looking at places where the landlord said this, by the way, quote unquote, where landlords are undercharging their tenants for rent. Because a mom and pop landlord, they usually just want to charge, to pay for the mortgage, the property taxes, and, whatever repairs and stuff are needed over the life of a building.
Yeah.
But it was obvious to me and some of our leaders that like we needed to talk to these tenants to be able to talk to each other and to either resist these rent hikes. A lot of these people were also facing renovation evictions. In New Hampshire, if a landlord wants to renovate, they can just say, get out in 30 days. And there's no legal definition of what a renovation is. So like we've seen times where like a landlord like literally just repainted, and that was considered we call it a renoviction. And so seeing a lot of like these injustices, has really kind of just even charged me even more. And the housing crisis has not gotten any better in that time. But also, in my time at Rights and Democracy now, I've opened up a little bit more into issue areas, particularly working with Jen on like healthcare and how terrible the system is. And before meeting Jen, I knew that our healthcare system was terrible.
Yeah.
And after knowing Jen, I can specifically articulate why in depth. And so, like issues that are really important to me and important to the organization I work for, Rights and Democracy, is really giving access to things that you need to survive. Like you can't just get by with less housing to a certain extent, right? Like, sure, you can downsize your home, but once you're a renter, I mean, your choices are pretty slim, and you're either, faced with either paying more money in rent or you go homeless. I also kind of see the same similarity with healthcare. Like, you can't go with less healthcare. You can't, go with less blood pressure medication. You can't, just have a good quality of life and then, go so long between like infusions that you might need. So I see the profit incentive really ruining the lives of working class people. And now particularly kind of talking more like today at Rights and Democracy, we put on a summer training series. We're going to be doing the same series again this fall. And really the point is that we want to help people to identify the problem, to be able to use the same language to identify the problem, and then to be able to talk about these solutions. One thing that I've kind of noticed in my lifetime, and I'm not the first person to make this observation, is that it feels like the right wing is really good at messaging.
Yes.
I was just listening to a podcast about Bill Clinton. It's called The Dollop. I absolutely love it. And I forget what the actual thing was, but like Bill Clinton said something silly. All right. And Rush Limbaugh had bumper stickers of that printed out like the next day. Like, this was like pre-internet here.
Yeah.
So like, and I see this too a lot on social media. I'll hear it when I go to like the board and alderman and I hear public testimony. Conservatives are on point with their messaging.
Yes.
Like one of their leaders says something and they are saying the same thing over and over again. Now I disagree heavily with what they're saying, but I'm a little jealous of that, of how well they stay on message.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the problem with like the left is that we're a bit more, I think, diversified. We have different reasons, like why we're involved with this. We have our own unique perspectives. We cherish unique perspectives, but it doesn't quite always lead to good messaging, or sometimes using terms that people don't quite understand. So really like a huge point of this is kind of just getting our messaging, and like the messaging of like our leaders, our members, on point. And then we are launching conversation pods with the people who attend the training. So what we want to do in this is to create a space for like-minded people to be able to talk about, the difficult conversations they're trying to have with their family members, with their neighbors, with their community members, and kind of like work through like some of like the problems that people are having in communicating. A huge point of our summer training series is just how to talk to somebody who might disagree with you politically. And I can give you a little bit of an example of kind of what we focused on if you'd like here.
Yeah, and before you do that, I mean, just to interject, I do want to say that, you know, and we talk about this on also do you know, the Hanging Left podcast with Todd Ayer, and I kind of went on a rant on one of our shows on there, and I'm sure I've said it at some point on here too, that you know, one of the things that frustrates me so much as a registered Democrat about the Democratic Party is I mean, I'll even go I'll speak a little further and stronger on it. My personal opinion is that Democrats are generally horrendous at messaging.
Yep.
Absolutely horrendous. That, you know, and
They're
on the
good at
rare,
shooting their own.
what's that?
They're really good at shooting their own.
Well,
I'll
like
go
my
further. They're really good. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little choppy. Say
Yeah.
that again. They're really good at what?
They're really good at shooting their own, especially here in New Hampshire. You know, prime example being this is primary seasons, people starting to run for different offices, but the party is already trying to pick their favorites and tell people not to run, which is
Yeah.
absolutely wrong. The party can't back the candidate after the primary, but when it comes to the primary, they shouldn't be stepping in. They shouldn't be telling anybody whether they should run or not. The people make that decision when they go in and vote at the primary.
Yeah, I just though I think there's a broader just problem with Democrats having so much difficulty communicating, and I always like to give this example. You know, on the rare occasion that a Democrat comes along who actually does know how to communicate well, they wind up serving 2 terms as president. You know, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton. You know, Democrats who actually understood how to talk to people about the issues that matter to them. But I feel like that's such a rare thing.
Yeah, and also too, I was just talking about this with one of our leaders at Rights and Democracy today. Is that I take Trump as an example. The party establishment didn't really like Trump, especially like 2015, around the era. Trump was really, really popular with the Republican base.
Mm-hmm.
And once the party realized that, like, oh, Trump is going to be the nominee, very likely, and he's really popular with our base, then they acquiesced to him. And then I used the example of Bernie Sanders on the side of the Democrats. And what did they do? You know, they saw Bernie was, especially in 2020, they saw Bernie gaining momentum. And then what happens? You know, Pete Buttigieg drops out, endorses Biden. You know, all the others drop out, endorse Biden. Mm-hmm. Biden gets enough to win the primary. And, you know, here we are today. And now we have a second Trump term. Obviously, Biden won that race, but what good did that do to only have the White House for 4 years? So I really see that, like, the Republicans nurture their base, and it seems like Democrats fight their base quite a bit.
Yeah, that goes to that goes to the point Jenny was making about shooting their own. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, figuratively, you're right. Literally, the conservatives are better at shooting each other.
Well, that's obviously, Brandon, because we don't want to get canceled. Obviously, you're referring to former Vice President Dick Cheney shooting his lawyer in the face.
Yeah. You know, and also the 2 guys
that was a funny one.
You know, also conservatives. Also the guy. Actually, you know what? I want to say this. I don't know if you also saw, but some guy was arrested for threatening Kelly Ayotte, our governor here. And I saw the committee to elect House Republicans try to claim this guy as a leftist. Now, I'm not going to try to claim this guy was a conservative. A lot of these people they have incomprehensible politics.
That's true.
But he was also mentioning like how he wanted to you know, fight the like Jewish controlled feds. Doesn't really quite sound like a leftist to me. But again, like, the right is really violent, and I find it really hilarious how they try to pin a lot of this violence on the left, even though most domestic terrorism in the past 50 years, like, I'm talking like for every 1 incident of leftist terrorism in that time, there have been 3 instances of right-wing terrorism.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to interject into saying that I would like to see us get away from all of that, because in every instance where a murder has taken place, where somebody has done harm to somebody else, there's something wrong with that individual. Yes. Not right, not left. There's something mentally ill wrong with them, or something wrong that enables them the ability to take another human life. And that's what we should be talking about as a society, not
Oh yeah.
it's a left person, it's a right person, it's a grant, we all can see their but when you get down to the crux of it, these people have an illness about them, that something about them in their brain told them that murdering somebody was okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I wish that was more the conversation. And hey, guess what? We don't do good in mental health care at all. We could talk about that, right? As how many of these people who fell out of the system or were missed by the system, who were exhibiting signs beforehand, and people missed it, right? Just like we do when somebody takes their own life, we miss those signs as a society. But we're in this point now, it's really scary because there's so much hate and vitriol out there that it is giving people almost a permission to be harmful to one another, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
And
also want
and
to add
that's
too. I think.
terrifying in and of itself.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I also think too that we just have a deeply violent culture. So I was making some jokes here about like right wing violence here, but I do want to state that like Americans as a whole, left, right, center, whatever, we are a violent bunch. We love violence. Our foreign policy is violent. Our domestic policy is violent.
Our
Violence is
sports
seen.
are violent. What do
Yeah.
we entertain ourselves with?
Yeah.
Violence of a sort,
Violence. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
a human thing. That's a
Yeah.
human thing. But in America, we go too far in that now it seems like, especially in the last decade, we're etching more and more into the society. We're going backwards. It's okay to be a racist out front now. It's okay to be a white supremacist now. You're defended for being that.
I can't recall a point in a moment in my lifetime up to now where it's been as cool to be openly racist and anti-Semitic and all of it and anti-immigrant than it is right now.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it seems like all the cool kids, you know what I mean? They're open about it. They're, the MAGA bros. They're proud. They're loud and proud, and they think it's great. And they're really they're enjoying themselves. They're having a good time.
They're having fun. They are.
Yep.
No, but seriously though, okay. So I'm on TikTok a lot, and I really respect. His name's Jamel Bowie. He's also a columnist for the New York Times. Not a very big fan of his publication these days. I'm a very big fan of him, the individual. And he pointed out something that has made me think quite a bit in one of his TikToks, which is we are returning to a level of political violence not seen since the 1960s and 1970s. I mean, think about all the leaders that we lost in that time. I mean, JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Hampton. Like we've had a lot of prominent political figures assassinated in that time frame. And in his opinion, yeah, we are regressing back to that.
I feel like we are too.
Oh yeah, no. It's a really scary time, and violence doesn't. It's especially like the type of violence we're seeing today. It doesn't accomplish anything.
No.
If anything, it's really sad. But like when I hear that, a public figure, especially on the right, is attacked or there's an attack that's thwarted, my first thought is like, please don't let this guy be a leftist. Please don't let this guy be a leftist. Because it's only going to give the right more justification for reprisals.
It doesn't matter though. It doesn't matter though, Brandon, because even no matter what his political, no matter what the shooter's political proclivities may be, the right is going to call them a leftist. They'll just lie about it. It doesn't even matter.
They'll go backwards in time to do that. I mean, Timothy McVeigh.
Yeah.
What would they say about Timothy McVeigh? Right? Yeah. Must be woke. And that just speaks to the degradation of our society. The way it used to be is Democrats or Republicans, you could have a disagreement with something. Like Reagan would say, I can disagree with you. But I can but we can work together on the things that we do agree on. Maybe 80% of the things I agree with you on, but 20% we don't. Well, 80% I'll work with you on that 20%. And when I served in the House, I could be on opposite sides of the podiums having a debate with somebody on one thing, and then on the next thing we're on the same side working together on it, and it feels like that doesn't exist anymore. There's no coming together anymore. The president of the United States used to say immediately after taking the oath, I am the president for all Americans. And now we have a president who says, I am the president for Republicans.
Yeah.
But the left are demons, and the left are bad and evil and dehumanizing
and hate
half the
America.
country
And
hate America.
That's the part that just makes me the angriest when I hear that. Yep.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of people serving in this military that fall on the left side of the political spectrum that would be really offended by that. Not to mention a whole lot of the rest of us,
Yeah,
I consider myself a patriot. I've always considered myself a patriot. I was a proud first responder. One of the proudest things I ever got to do was sew the American flag onto my jackets. That is a memory that was etched in me, getting to sew the flag on my shoulders when I got my bunker jacket, when I got my gear. And to have anybody tell me that I'm not a patriot. My grandfather's name is inscribed on Harmon Wall at Norwich University after 30 years in the Marines. Screw you.
Yeah.
My family knows plenty about this country, and we're very proud and we're very patriotic. And how dare you?
Yeah.
What's more patriotic than being able to debate with one another?
Well, that's what they claim, but the thing about it is they don't really want, I don't want to do like a left right thing here, but like, I do just have a lot of this on my mind right now, considering the assassination of Charlie Kirk, 8 days ago. Like we're seeing like Jimmy Kimmel get indefinitely suspended from his talk show for not even making fun of Charlie Kirk. He was making fun of Trump's response to Charlie Kirk.
Right.
I think if Stephen Colbert, the highest rated, nighttime show, gets canceled for his jokes, he literally got canceled for jokes about Donald Trump. And also,
and that's what just happened here.
Yeah, and maybe I'm spending a little too much time on social media here, but like I really like to follow the right quite a bit. Like I'm still on Twitter. I'm never calling it X. And I've been seeing a lot of like the rhetoric that's been kind of coming out here. And I mean, these people just went from like 6 months ago being like, I should have a right to say that Black people have a lower IQ. And these are the same people that are now saying like, you're not mourning Charlie Kirk sufficiently,
Right.
And like, by the way, I want to say he did not deserve to be killed. He did not deserve to be murdered. But also, it didn't sit right with me how much the media has kind of whitewashed what he said. Like, oh, he just wanted, the spirit of debate. It's like, no, this guy would just find
the spirit of debate is not complaining about Jewish money and things.
Yeah, exactly. And like going to like, a college campus and talking to some like high 18-year-old and then like finding like, like the dumbest clip and then posting that online. Like that's not really good faith debate. That's not really like listening to each other. Like he was just trying to get slam dunks. And he had a radical agenda that was incredibly hateful. So I think sometimes when I point that out, people say like, "What, do you think he deserved to die?" And like,
absolutely
no.
Not.
But also, I'm not going to whitewash his legacy either. Like he believed really hateful things.
Right.
He said that if he saw a black pilot, he'd be really worried.
Yeah, he literally said
that. Like that's how we would. So what would he say? I wonder what his opinion was for a female pilot, because we all know that he thinks a woman's place is in the home and giving birth. And it's that kind of thinking that puts a lot of women in bad places. And I could speak from that personally. Did the man deserve to be murdered? No, nobody deserves to be murdered. I'm anti-death penalty for any, period.
Yeah.
And, he had every right to spew whatever he wanted to spew and to debate people on that. I don't necessarily agree with how or what he might say, but that doesn't give anybody the right to take him away from this world.
No,
there are two children that are going to grow up and they're not even going to have a memory of their father because they're too young, that they will have no memory of their dad. And that's super awful, horrible. And Jimmy Kimmel didn't say anything to the contrary of that. He didn't say that murder was correct at all. He was Trump was literally asked about the guy's murder and he flipped the conversation to his ballroom. Like, go watch what Jimmy Kimmel actually said and what he was playing. And he was picking on Trump because Trump didn't go, oh, gee, sorry, yes, I'm very sad. And he immediately changed the conversation to check out all this equipment over here. We're building the ballroom they've wanted for the last 150 years. Because, for the last 150 years, Americans have been complaining about not having a ballroom in the White House, not about not having chemo for their children.
Carolyn Poole put in a comment that's worth reading because it's on this subject. Read earlier that they want Kimmel to apologize and give a substantial donation to the family and his foundation. By the way, there's another element to this whole thing. There's a common thread between what happened to Colbert and what has happened to Jimmy Kimmel is that in both instances there is a merger that someone wants to get approved. So that's why Colbert his contract is not, he's still on, but his contract is not being renewed. And that's, I think, the real reason they've done this to Jimmy Kimmel. They want to make sure that these mergers that are happening behind the scenes get approved. And that's the real reason they're acquiescing to Trump is so that he will look favorable on these murders.
Money.
Yeah. Also, full transparency here. I'm an anti-capitalist. I am a socialist, and I think that this is a great example about how capital conspires with fascists. See, what is it, Viacom, and then what is it? Is it what's the name of the actual parent company? Was it ByteDance or something like that?
Skydance.
Skydance, yeah, whatever.
ByteDance is TikTok. Yeah, You're thinking of Skydance, yeah.
Yeah, so here's the thing. The interest of Viacom and Skydance is only to make money. And they do not care about, like the concept of free speech. They don't care about democracy. Their only job is to make money for their shareholders or whoever. And by the way, this is a problem in healthcare and housing as well, too. There's no regard for human rights. There's no regard for any of this except for making money. And, I think that this is really like a canary in the coal mine here. If you've looked at how like authoritarian governments have risen in any part of the world, the media, the comedians are usually the first targets because they are the most visible targets.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what's happening right here. Like, we don't have freedom of speech. Like, go ahead and say your true thoughts about who Charlie Kirk was. Say your true thoughts about, Israel committing a genocide. Say your true thoughts,
people are losing their jobs.
With Donald Trump.
If they say something negative about Charlie Kirk, they're losing their jobs if they disagreed with his opinion. And a lot of these people have said nothing that supports a murder or what happened to this man because it's horrible.
Yeah.
None of us and none of these people are saying, oh, he deserved it, because nobody deserves to have their life taken from them. That's just
no. I mean, just for the record, I think he was a bad guy. I think he put a lot of really toxic things out into the universe in terms of his politics. But all that being said, I'm absolutely horrified by what happened to this man. My God, and that's I mean, it's chilling. I think it's horrible. And if it can happen to him, it could happen to any of us.
But going beyond that, though, let's expand this a little bit, because what's really bothering me is the assault on the press, period. Not just that these guys are getting taken off the air, but the press in general is being assaulted. People are losing their jobs in that regard. And if you look at I was watching a video earlier from one of the press guys who were in LA during with ICE, trying to stand up with ICE, and them literally being targeted and shot at with these less than lethal. Like, the guy had to have emergency surgery. They had to take this thing out of his leg. It was really bad. But the press are being assaulted intentionally. Like, they're very obviously press, but they're being targeted. And the only reason to target the press is to silence them so that people don't know what's going on. Why else do you target the press?
To intimidate.
Exactly. And to control the message. So if we're attacking the press, if we're attacking people and costing them their jobs if they say something you don't like, we're what free speech?
Well, yeah. I mean, well, also too, it's kind of complicated here because in some ways I also do blame the press for normalizing Trump, especially like what they're doing today. I just don't think that they have done a good job. Like, they're kind of in this weird middle position where they don't want to lose their access to Trump and other Republicans. And by the way, this is true of any, like this even applies to Democrats too, as well. But I think it's incredibly worse on the right here. But like they've normalized Trump. They, you know, like ABC again, like they cowed down to Trump. You know, in this very instance with Jimmy Kimmel right here. So it's like, you know, they're being attacked for, you know, opposing Trump or having one of their employees oppose Trump. But at the same time, like a lot of media, like executives and media owners, they are in lockstep. They love Trump tax cuts. They love a lot. They love the big beautiful bill. So it's kind of this weird balancing act, but the press always ends up getting burned anyways. Like anytime you try to appeal to a fascist, you're going to get burned.
True. Well, loyalty when it comes to Trump only goes one way, ultimately.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a losing game, and I feel like we're all paying the price for it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like we should be a little bit more optimistic, though.
So let's kind of circle back to the part about messaging, because you know, we've talked a lot about again, these are examples, right? Because you mentioned how the right is so much better at messaging. And here we are. We've been talking about this is how they control the message. Here's an example, you know, what's happening right now. So what is the solution? Because you started to talk about earlier, Brandon, solutions as far as how Democrats can get better. Because like I say, by the way, I'll just give you a quick example of how I feel Democrats are horrendous at messaging, and maybe you have an idea of how to fix this. This is a rant. I'm sure Jenny's heard me say this before. During the Biden administration, when the economy was actually doing extraordinarily well, coming out of COVID, and except for inflation, that was like the one major problem that everyone was complaining about. But we were doing better on inflation than the entire rest of the industrialized world.
True.
Coming out of inflation, we actually had the lowest inflation of anybody. But we had a president who couldn't manage to put these sentences together to explain to the American people, yes, we understand prices are too high, I know, but we're actually doing better than the rest of the world. And this will get better too. Just hang in there, because the fundamentals of the economy are actually extraordinarily strong. Record low unemployment, you know, everything else about the economy is great. We have this one problem, but we'll get through it. But we are doing better than everyone else. We had a you know, at that point, a near octogenarian president who couldn't, I mean, we all saw the debate. I mean, Biden could barely, you know, he was not the messenger he was at one time. But unfortunately, because the Democrats are so bad at messaging, there really wasn't anybody else in the Democratic Party who could explain what I just did either. So this is an example of where that's an example of where I'm coming from, where something should be very, very easy and simple to explain. I'm not an economist. I'm not even good at math, but I understood, and I can explain it. But it's like once Democrats get elected, it's like they forget how to explain anything to people. It's really strange. But,
yeah.
But how do we fix that?
Well, I do want to push back a little bit here, because I don't think actually the economy was that good, though, because I mean, you did explain inflation. But I believe that like they could have talked about, well, they talked a little bit about corporate greed, depending on like who you were listening to.
Yeah.
But there's this weird balancing act that Biden had to make, was that like, listen, the economy is really good right now, and don't talk about inflation at all. Like, look at the stock market. Look at, you know, like, hey, we have like, you know, we're adding jobs, but it's like, you know, are people going from working in a factory to going to work at like Arby's, you know, for like considerably less? So I think also what's really important about messaging is actually having a good policy, having a good slate of policies.
Agreed.
I can't really tell you what like Harris's plan was on healthcare. I couldn't really tell you like
Good
what
point.
like she had like a housing plan that was going to give first-time home buyers $20,000. But I'll tell you right now, I make the median wage in Manchester. Throw in that $20,000. Hell, throw in an extra $100,000. I'm still not qualifying for a mortgage anywhere in this city. The city that I grew up in, that was, you know, it was a working class town, and it's harder and harder for folks. And they never really acknowledged, you know, like the like they'll play lip service, like, oh, housing's really expensive, we're gonna, you know, get more affordable housing. How are you gonna do that?
Right.
I don't think I'm not seeing, you know, any prominent Democrats, maybe outside of like the Bernie Sanders, you know, like the Cory Bushes, or actually, yeah. But Rashida Tlaib as well. Like, you're not seeing like, hey, we need to invest in public housing. We need to repeal the Faircloth Amendment, which prevents us from adding new housing units without destroying existing housing units. A lot of these solutions are private market solutions that are making developers wealthy, and they're leaving, the poor and working class. Well, there's really only the working class. They're leaving this, basic human need to be inaccessible. So I think like a really good first point of good messaging is we actually need something to message.
Have a policy that you can articulate. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I have critiques of Bernie Sanders, even though I did just praise him quite a bit here. But I would say he was probably one of the best messengers that the party has ever seen. Like
Still
supporters can tell you what he actually supported. Like, what's Bernie going to do about, skyrocketing healthcare costs? Oh, Medicare for all. Like, these are like solid policies that you can go out and communicate to them. So I tend to believe that, our future presidents should be current aldermen or city councilors or state senators at this time. So I really think that focusing as local as we can is where you have the most control. I say that like we need to be holding our local, really any level too, but holding our elected officials accountable, demanding that they actually have solid policies that we can go out and communicate. And I think also what's really important as well too is like, being present in your community. I recommend to anybody here, like, go to your city hall, go to a board of mayor and alderman meeting, go to a committee meeting up at the state house if you can spend some time in Concord. Really see how what's going on and communicating. Whether it's a podcast, whether it's a coffee hour that you want to do with some friends, where you kind of discuss everything. But then also I think it's really good that we need to be recruiting people to run for these positions, supporting them to get elected, and then also working with them while they're in power. The work doesn't stop as soon as the election's over. That's when the work really just begins. So I really value, getting friends together, getting a group, and trying to make as much change as you can, even if it's just a little bit. Like, maybe it's making, the zoning codes in your city more lax. Maybe it's, advocating for universal childcare in, the state house. But I really think that the core there is we need good candidates that actually stand for stuff. And also, mind you too, I'm not a Democrat anymore. I work for a nonpartisan organization, and I think that if you're really frustrated with the Democratic Party, we really need to be decentering the Democratic Party. They are not going to save us. They do not want to listen to us. They do not want to hear what we have to say. They want to stick, their fingers in their ears and say, let's send out another 14 postcards, 2 weeks before election. They're not expanding their base at all. I've knocked a lot of doors for various Democrats in my time, specifically here in Manchester. And I can tell you, I've noticed that the doors are getting further and further apart. The party is not adding new people, especially compared to Republicans and independents. It really tells me something that, when a plurality of the people here in Manchester are choosing to register as independents, it would make me think, if I were a party leader, why are people opting, not to associate with my party? Now, maybe they want to vote in both primaries, right? But the myth of a true independent is not real. Most independents vote one way most of the time.
Right.
And there are split ticket voters here and there, but people don't want to associate with the brand of the Democratic Party, because what does the Democratic Party actually stand for? So I personally have tried to change the party within. I got really tired of that. So I do my issue advocacy. I like to say I help any good person running for office here. If they happen to be a Democrat, then great. But I really don't think that the party is going to be the basis of our salvation. It's going to be people that are forming groups, people that are working together, building their own power, and then having the party come to you. We need to have a strong group of people here in New Hampshire that are just advocating for Medicare for all. And these people are willing to knock on doors. They're willing to make phone calls. They're willing to campaign for a candidate if they support this one issue. Like, I mentioned Medicare for all as an example. I think that's really the only way. Like, we can't ask the Democratic Party to, drop their corporate donors. Like, they are going to have to realize that they don't have a base of support anymore, but we over here do. Mm-hmm. And we will help you, but here are our conditions. I don't really see any better way, if I'm being honest with you, but I'm willing to do that.
Well, for a long time, I called myself an independent because I didn't want to be associated with either party, either of the two major parties. And I kind of still don't, but then I sort of gave in, I guess you could say, and said, I'll just start calling myself a Democrat again because I'm not changing my registration. I don't bother to change my registration back and forth. And at this point, I think there's, unless something drastic changes on the right, I don't think I'll ever vote for another Republican. Most of my votes over the years have been for Democrats anyway, but I have voted for independents at certain times, and I have voted for Republicans a couple of times, usually just if it happened to be in a local election and there was a Republican on the ballot who I knew personally and who I felt was someone of integrity, even if I didn't necessarily agree with them on everything. I might vote for them, and I will publicly acknowledge, and Jenny knows this about me, I kind of regret it in hindsight, but I did vote for Chris Sununu a couple of times. Ideologically, this is how low the bar is for, the type of Republican I would accept. But ideologically, Chris Sununu always seemed to me the kind of Republican who does not entirely terrify me. You know what I mean? like a Northeastern moderate Republican who I don't think is totally evil. In hindsight, I regret it because as soon as it became inconvenient to him to continue to oppose Trump, he just completely gave in and got right back on the Trump train. So now I regret it because I don't think he has any character.
No,
anyway.
I don't really think Sununu stands for really anything other than maybe his family's legacy. But definitely, like he's not, he's not like the Laura Loomer type of conservative, that's saying like fluoride's turning your kids trans or something like that.
Yeah, he's not a lunatic.
Yeah. But he's, if anything, it's more kind of like a dangerous, like, I think it's more dangerous, like he's affable, like the media in New Hampshire loves Sununu.
Yes.
I actually used to be his tracker. I used to film him giving speeches and stuff like that.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And I gotta tell you, every reporter that he bumped into, like instant pals with them.
Oh yeah.
Like, he's just
charming. He's good on TV.
Yeah. And he kind of has a tendency to say yes to like the last person that he talked to.
Yeah.
Which is honestly sometimes a huge plus in politics. Just kind of saying, oh yeah, that sounds great to me. Like he said like things about like not wanting to change the abortion laws in New Hampshire, ends up signing a bill doing that anyway. And then
they buried it inside the budget.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and that's, it's calculated, and I gotta respect that.
Legalized rape by medical instrumentation.
But speaking of that too, so Sununu also could just blatantly, there was Jenny and I, this was a number of years ago now, but there was a podcast that Jenny and I became aware of. I don't remember what show it was on, but Sununu was on this right-wing podcast, and Sununu had always portrayed himself publicly as being a pro-choice Republican, and had always been consistently pro-choice, and that was something he was never going to budge on. On this podcast, the podcaster kind of asks him about that, and Sununu actually said, well, I don't think you'll find a more pro-life governor in the entire country. I've been consistently pro-life. Like, he just blatantly lies.
Put him in front of a right-wing reporter, and his whole lingo changed.
Yeah,
I liked that man. I liked that man. I voted for that man. But when he signed that budget into law, knowing full well that there was a mandate in there that would force rape by medical instrumentation, which when I say that means forcing a transvaginal ultrasound on anyone prior to them being allowed to have an abortion, regardless of circumstances of what have you. I was done. That's just disgusting beyond disgusting. There's no coming back from signing something like that. You should have said, nope, go fix it. Take that out. Not going to do this.
And it did
Yeah.
get
But
taken
no.
out later, but just to
But
clarify.
not until after it had been law
Right.
for a year in this state. And I have no idea how many women or young girls were put through something that they should have never been forced to go through, that
I don't know
no
that it was.
one should be forced to go through prior to an abortion. It was law for a
It was.
year.
I don't know if it was ever enforced in any way because I don't know if most people even realized it was
Oh,
there.
you think that the medical community goes against the law? You're
No,
crazy. Because
no,
they
but
lose their
I just
licenses to practice. If the
yeah.
law says you must do this,
I'm not
it
defending it. Just
puts
to be
them in a
clear, I'm just
terrible situation.
no. I know. I'm just saying. I
If
don't
it
know if
happened to
it was.
one person, that's one person too
Oh,
many.
I agree. Oh,
Period.
I fully agree.
100%.
I
But
fully
nothing
agree on
like
that.
that should ever be in law. That should never be in law. But of
No.
course, I'm taking us a little off. But he was supposedly pro-choice, and
Yeah,
then
and
he
actually,
did that.
and if I can kind of tie this back in though, this is because like no one's really held Sununu accountable for anything. The media in New Hampshire absolutely has not, and part of that has been because local journalism has been so gutted.
Mhm.
A lot of like the people that have been in Concord, for decades, have told me like every like major for New Hampshire publication would have their own state house reporter. And now when I talk to like reporters from like NHPR, Union Leader, Concord Monitor, you're seeing them having to cover the state house and a bunch of other stuff too. So like there's not really a lot of attention necessarily paid to what's actually going on. And also too, like these reporters don't want to lose their access to the politicians. So holding them accountable is again kind of like a balancing act.
Mhm.
So I really think that's kind of where like citizens kind of have to fill that void. We shouldn't have to necessarily. But I really think that like we really should be drawing more attention and talking about the things that we're seeing at Concord or like our local city hall or really
I don't think
whatever.
the press challenges at all.
No, not at all. Like a lot.
Used to be. If anything, they for lack of a better term, they whitewash stuff. Okay, when the Nazis were in Concord and they did a Nazi march salute down the street, WMUR reported they were walking. They walked down the street. They did not walk down the street. We were there. We saw it. We videotaped it. They were
Yeah.
marching and doing
Yeah.
their Hail
Channel
Hitler thing. And
Channel
when they
9 made it.
said that,
Yeah.
I was so angry by the way that they said it and made it sound like, to me, it was like they were saying the person that they assaulted, it was their fault. That it was
They made it.
their own person's fault. They got assaulted by these people just walking down the street.
I think they refused. They didn't even call them Nazis, and they kind of made it sound like they were just out for a summer stroll, and somebody got in their way or something. NBC News 10 in Boston did a much better job
Yeah,
because
they
we also
did.
saw their report, and they did a really good job. And they called them neo Nazis, and they were and they covered exactly what happened. But Channel 9 just really was like
Those
just
people
really
call
soft
themselves
pedaled the whole
Nazis.
thing.
They're very proud of who they are.
Well,
They
yeah.
carry the Nazi flag. They did the Hail Hitler salute. They were saying Hail Hitler. They're not quiet about being Nazis. The fact
No.
that the media doesn't have enough courage to call them that is alarming because that's how the media has gotten weak.
Some of the media, like I said, NBC 10 out of Boston,
Yes,
did
they
it
did
right.
do a much better. Yes,
They
they
did a
did.
good job.
Isn't
Yes,
it kind
they
of
did.
funny though that like a Boston media organization like covers New Hampshire better than New Hampshire media like has? Yeah, it's absolutely wild to me. And I will say like they are emboldened because Trump is in office.
Oh, yeah.
I saw a lot between 2016 and 2020,
Big time.
specifically here in Manchester. And the 4 years that that Biden was president, they were sad. They were sad. But as soon as Trump got reelected, I've seen my friends and I have seen an increase in Nazi stickers being posted all over Manchester.
Oh yeah.
We're seeing these people that are proud to be marching, and then we have a
There was
media
a business
that's too afraid.
downtown that was assaulted. There was a
Yeah, the
business on
Hot
Elm Street that had a swastika painted on their window.
Yeah,
They
the
still
Hot
have
And
a
Knot.
there
cracked
was
window.
also last weekend at the Mosaic, not in the Mosaic Art Collective itself, but the bathroom just outside of it, the men's bathroom, there was something put there that was racial. That actually, which is why they're doing a fundraiser right now for Black Lives Matter because of what was written in that bathroom. I don't know exactly what was said. I just know that it was bad enough.
Yeah. And also kind of going back to the media. So what's been really frustrating is a lot of ridiculous stuff gets said specifically in the New Hampshire State House. And WMUR does not cover it. The union leader does not cover it. And somebody from WMUR has told a friend of mine that WMUR does not cover anything in the New Hampshire State House unless it gets regional media attention. They are so afraid to actually call anything out.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not really doing their due diligence to inform the citizenry. Like,
it didn't used to be that
do
way.
not go to WMUR if you want to know what happened during the legislative session. Like, they don't cover anything really.
No.
So it's like there's not really a lot of good sources of information. And these processes, like, the process, as Jen knows, like passing a bill, to somebody that doesn't really know the legislative process, it's really complex. Like, you need people that know, something about the process. You need to know, what an executive session is on a committee. They need to know, like, what does inexpedient to legislate actually mean? It's really difficult for the average person who's busy with a lot of things to be able to kind of discern that. So again, I think that's kind of where, like, we, and I think you're doing this here with your show, is, showing people like what is actually going on, to talk about it, and to maybe actually do something about it. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
It's like I always say, you may not get into politics, but politics gets into every aspect of your life. Everything that you do, breathe, eat, drink, think about has got some level of government involved in it. So you should be a little more concerned with what those critters are doing.
Yeah, if you don't care about politics, your boss, your landlord, and your insurance company certainly do.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Well, we've been on for almost an hour. Is there? We can start to wind this down, but I mean, is there anything we didn't discuss? I mean, we're not on a, on the podcast here, we're not on a particular schedule or anything. So if there's anything we didn't get into that either of you want to touch on, we certainly can.
Yeah, just kind of one thing that's been kind of on my mind, kind of keeping it local here in New Hampshire. So as a community organizer, I like to spend a lot of time in the field. I like to leave the house. I like to go all over the state, talk to as many people as I can. And I'm a chatty person. I'm an organizer, and a leader of ours at RAD invited me out to the Antrim Home and Harvest Festival this weekend. And they had like a bunch of tables set up on Main Street. I don't know if you've ever been to Antrim. It's cute as hell. I love it. It's a very cute downtown. And so like I was just like striking up conversations with people, and kind of asking them like, so like, I'm just stopping in from Manchester. Like, what are like the issues like out here? Like, what problems are people facing? And virtually everyone I talked to said like the school funding, like our school budget is raising our property taxes. And when I go all over the state, it's pretty much a similar story. Our property taxes are through the roof here. And a lot of this, and a lot of people don't realize this, is like this is tied directly because the state is not providing municipalities, with like adequate education funding. We've slashed the interest and dividends tax, which I like to call the millionaire's tax. And then that burden is falling more heavily on the working class here in New Hampshire. Property taxes are really regressive. And actually, my friend John Kuiper did a really good TikTok about this, where he compared a home in, I want to say, it was just out of Portsmouth. It was like one of those surrounding towns. It was a home that was about $600,000 out there. And he did the property tax assessment on it. And their property taxes for the year, I think, were something like, like $9,000. And then he finds a house half the cost in Newmarket, and which is much more working class, and did the property tax calculation, and the tax bill was the same. So when we have a system that relies so heavily on property taxes, the people that can afford it the least end up paying a higher share of what they're actually taking in, what their homes are worth. And we're not really considering like how else could we be raising revenue in this state. And I think that a lot of particularly Democrats are really afraid to talk about things like, like not even just reinstating the millionaire's tax, but even upping it. I think that we need some sort of progressive income tax in the state to invest in things like education so that the students here don't graduate with some of the highest amount of debt in the country, that we need to be investing in rural hospitals. There's a hospital in Franklin that's closing down soon. And people in the North
They're
Country are
closing
having to
Franklin Hospital.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
No way. Concord bought that. Franklin
um,
Hospital's the only one that I know of that's in Franklin. Which
yeah,
would mean that means all of those patients will either have to be going to Lakes Region, Dartmouth, or Concord Hospital.
yep.
And
So I was just
Wow.
that's not cool. That's
I was just talking to
not
somebody.
cool.
I was just talking to somebody in Gilmington today, one of our attendees of our training series, and she
Yeah.
was saying that the paramedics are actually training on how to give birth in a car or an ambulance
Wow.
because
We already do that. They already do that.
but
They already do that.
they've had 6 births in the ambulance in the past year.
Oh shoot.
Yeah, because
Oh,
people
I
have,
get what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah,
because there's no well, New London Hospital closed their obstructors a long time ago. Franklin
Mhm.
closed theirs. If you go here in Manchester, CMC closed theirs years ago.
yeah.
Yeah, there's nowhere to have a baby. You can have a baby at Concord Hospital at Dartmouth, I think Lakes Region, and Elliott. But that's not a lot. Used to be every hospital
It's not a
delivered,
lot.
not anymore.
It's not a lot at all. And that's the thing about
Well, there're
this
going to
is
be a
that
lot of stork pins going on, but that's scary because that's a lot of risk when you're, if something goes wrong and they bleed out. There's
yeah.
a
Well, I
lot
was
of
like,
things that can go wrong. It's better to be in a controlled environment, or at least
and
in a midwifery situation where you've got yeah. Geez, the next
like,
thing you're going to tell me is the cops are going to be training to deliver because they make it to the scene sometimes first.
yeah, and like I think that I don't see enough of this on the left. I think, particularly, unfortunately, Democrats are the main party of power on the left. But I'm not really seeing a lot of messaging, particularly from the New Hampshire Democrats, about like how these things are not just costs to a community; they're an investment in a community. Like, why would you want to move into a community where if you're going to start a family, it's going to be 45 minutes at like the quickest to be able to get to a maternity ward?
Yeah, that's scary.
Like if we're not putting money into these basic things, like these are services. They're not supposed to be making money. Like highways don't make money.
It's not
Highways
just
are a
that
huge
too.
thing.
The other side of that coin is when that ambulance is traveling that much farther, another 20 minutes to get to the next closest hospital, that's your crew and your ambulance that's out of town. So if you're in Andover, New Hampshire, and used to bring your patient to Franklin, now you're
Yep.
bringing your patient to Concord. That's
Yeah.
a 20-minute additional run. There and back, the ambulance is no longer in town. So you're hoping that the next towns are going to cover your town if another call happens because you can't get a quicker, you're not turning around quicker. I mean, I used to work there. I used to bring people there. And at least in Franklin, you could like run back kind of. But yeah, you can't, you can't do that. You can't do that from Concord.
Yeah, and I just want to say this is not an accident. Like this just didn't. It's not an unfortunate series of events that have led us here. It has been an intentional disinvestment in public good, whether it's hospitals, whether it's an EMS service, again, education. Like these are all problems that are fixable, but the people in power in our state government right now don't want to fix that. They purposely don't want. They don't want these things.
I feel like Americans are just ignorant because if we were smart, we would want our children to be the best doctors, the best paramedics, have the best equipment. You would want the best. So then when your ass is old and it's you they're picking up, they got the best and you've got the best taking care of you. Instead, we make med school so freaking difficult that we don't have enough neurosurgeons. We can't have a level trauma 1 center or a level trauma 2 center even in most places because we don't have the providers necessary to provide that care, which often is talking about pediatric emergency medicine. I mean, we don't have that. You can't get to that trauma center, right? This is what we're denying ourselves is the very best because we're too chintzy to want to invest in it. And we're going to nickel and dime and bitch about everything. Why should I pay for this? Why should I pay for that? Well, so you live longer. So you live better, right? So you live in a better, cleaner, happier world. And instead, we're going freaking backwards in this country. There's more hate, there's more vitriol, there's more nastiness. We don't want to invest in anything. New Hampshire just lost funding. So students like kiddos who like come out of foster care and don't have anything can go to school. That come from low income families can go to school. That funding just got pulled by the feds too. Thank you, Trump. The money that's supposed to be going to these rural hospitals we have in the North Country, we have in limited access areas are going to close because that money has now been cut off. And people think it's not going to affect them. And by the time it does, it's going to be too little too late. Then what? But we're letting this happen. People are so angry and pissy and so nasty in their view, they can't see through their own hate to realizing they're screwing themselves.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, we're shooting ourselves in the foot here. Again, it's because we view these things as costs. We view these things as a waste of taxpayer money, and we're not really viewing them for what they are, which is an investment back into us. Like, I always find the line of like, why should I pay for the school district? I don't have any kids in this school. But it's like, did you go to school at any point in your life? Do you want, a doctor that knows how to read when you go to the hospital? But again, I think a lot of this ties back into like we are so individualistic as a culture that we don't really see a lot of these publicly funded programs as like an investment in themselves. They view it as like, oh, we're giving money to somebody who doesn't deserve it. And I've even seen this kind of line of thinking even at like with local Democrats here. Like they think that these services will make us lazy and not want to work anymore. When in reality, it's like no one wants to work right now because you can't afford to live. You can't afford to work. Like I think a lot of
be able to work one job and afford to live, but people are working 2 and 3 jobs and they still can't afford to live in the way our society is now.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I'm a comfortable man without any kids right now, and I can't qualify for a mortgage anywhere in Manchester.
So, my grocery bill's gone up like $50 in the last few months. And there's no sign of it going down. Like I'm even able to buy some stuff off of Amazon because it's cheaper than my local discounted grocery store, which is really bizarre. But yeah, the prices are insane. I don't know everybody I talk to is not buying as much meat as they used to because they just can't afford it. They're cutting back. They're making pastas. They're making more giant meals that'll last a little bit longer or stretch it a little farther. Like, if you put a chili together, you can get away with a little less meat in it and more bean to kind of fill it up and, ways to cut corners because it's just.
Yeah.
Although in fairness, I mean, Trump did warn us that this was going to be happening. Remember, he said that at Christmas time, instead of buying your daughter 10 dolls, you just buy her 1 or 2 dolls and that would be good enough.
Oh my God. Could you imagine if like Obama or Biden said that?
I know.
Like how the entire right wing environment there would be like frothing at the mouths.
Oh yeah. Even said it himself, if I did any of the things that he's doing.
Yeah.
That's one thing that frustrates me is that we had hyperinflation. Well, maybe not hyperinflation. I don't know what the actual term is here, but because of COVID, right? Like production was down, demand was still pretty steady. That's going to cause inflation. But now we're seeing inflation that is completely man-made. Like these are from tariffs.
Yeah.
That 100%. Are imposed by one tyrant here. I don't know why we even allow the president to impose tariffs.
They're not supposed to. Nothing he's doing is supposed to be legal, but he's doing it anyway because he knows it's going to get tied up in court. He doesn't give 2 shits about the law.
Trump has done so many things by executive order that no one has ever attempted to do by executive order, but he just does it. He just does it and he gets away with it. He has a compliant Congress and a compliant Supreme Court.
Nobody's willing to shut him down.
Nobody. Yeah, he really can act as a monarch.
And when you are acting above the law as the nation's #1 law enforcement person in charge of everything, who's going to stop you? If Congress isn't willing to stand up to you and say no, if lawmakers, not just lawmakers, but if law enforcement is willing to go along to get along somebody posted in the chat room earlier that in Massachusetts, they're just dangling money over people's heads. Hey, you get a $25,000 sign-on bonus.
Oh yeah, I'll put that comment back up. Yeah,
right.
Because I don't think I read this one.
So people are very, apparently in America, are very cheap with to give up their morals or their values. They'll sell their souls for a few extra bucks. We in this country said it's illegal for law enforcement to profile. It's illegal for law enforcement to do quotas because we saw all the bad things that happened, innocent people being captured to make those numbers. And now here we are. Law enforcement is allowed and even encouraged to profile. They're encouraged to grab every body. How many bodies did you get today? They want that 3,000 body count a day. They don't care if you're legally legal or whatever. We watched how many American citizens have we seen beaten, being told they have no rights, being taken into custody, held for hours or even days.
Yeah.
And they're American citizens.
Oh,
and
yeah,
this is happening.
One thing I think a lot about, that meme, how like men think about the Roman Empire every day, or I don't know if you've heard that or not. Well, I think about the Roman Republic more so. And one thing that's really interesting to me is that even after the Republic fell and we started to see like emperors, they didn't really call them emperors at the time though, but they still kept a lot of the aesthetics of a republic. They still had senators. They still had, some like elections to. I think they were like the tribunals or whatever. I'm a little rusty now on that. But I really fear that we are kind of in this state right now. I feel like we look like a republic, but we have really moved towards autocracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one fear and one hope. And then maybe I can shut up here. Which is my one fear is that maybe it's probably gonna be Democrats to take power, maybe again soon. And that they're just gonna kind of forget that 8 years of Trump happened, and then they're just going to be somebody.
They will.
Else. My hope is
and
that
they won't do anything to prevent it.
Yeah, and we really need we need something to save this democracy here. We need radical reforms. We need to really curb the power of the executive. We really need to make sure that we can't have federal agents going completely masked up, no badge showing, and kidnapping people.
Yeah.
Oftentimes legal residents
and not having to identify themselves at all. That's never been. It's always law enforcement is supposed to identify themselves. That's how you know they're really law enforcement. We've spent years and years and years pounding it into women's heads. If it doesn't look like it's a cop car, call 911 and don't, and to be careful and people pretending. And now they're just doing it.
Well, law enforcement too tends to skew conservative. So for them, I mean, this is a great.
For some in law enforcement, this is great because they can do whatever they want.
I mean, look at those
held accountable for the abuses that
look at the cops in Concord who let the Nazis just get in their trucks and drive off.
No, they didn't drive off. No. They climbed in the back of a U-Haul, sat down, and drove off. I'm sorry. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. If their color or their skin had been different, do you think they would have allowed them to pile in the back of a U-Haul and drive off? Because that's legal.
Would have been beaten with clubs.
Oh, in 2020, there was a photo of a New Hampshire State Trooper fist bumping a Proud Boy. They are at the very least sympathetic to their causes.
Yeah.
And I think also too, as we're disinvesting in things like education, healthcare, housing, we're seeing an increase in law enforcement at a time when crime is at an historic low. It spiked during COVID, but crime rates have returned in the general trend that they were going. So my fear is that as schools are being defunded, we are adding to police departments, and we see this in the federal level too. We're cutting education funding for more ICE agents. We are, we're putting more and more money into these systems. And again, ICE agents are making more money than teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about taking special education students out of the public classroom and putting them into an institution again, a special building just for them. I mean, centuries of progress is being undone in a matter of months, and it's getting and people are stepping back and allowing it to happen, and that is just mind-boggling to me. I thought we wanted our kids to be better, right? Have a better world than us. We're going backwards.
We need to demand that our leaders can express a bold vision of how they're going to reverse the damage that has been done. And like we can't just keep having, and I say we, I'm not a Democrat anymore, but I acknowledge I'm in a reluctant coalition with Democrats,
Right.
because I am on the left here. But like we can't just be saying like, oh, Republicans are so terrible, like we're gonna undo what Trump did, which is what they do need to do, but they also need to start stating like, what do you actually believe? Like, what are your solutions on healthcare?
Yeah.
Like, what are your solutions to
You had all that time in office. Why didn't you do something more for it?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that we need on the left really need to hold the candidates that we support more accountable. Like we can't just have them voting and then receiving absolutely no feedback, no consequences from us. And I think that like we should be a little bit rude to them, in my opinion, when called for.
Yeah.
But like we can't let the Democrats, just return to the status quo. I think a lot of privileged, more wealthy, more white Democrats just kind of wish that we could return to 2008. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you right now, 2008 wasn't working for a lot of Americans.
Right.
The inability of this country to recover from the Great Recession is why we have Trump in the first place. And like all these things that receive bipartisan support, like NAFTA, I mean, those gutted industrial jobs. And in those regions, that's where Trump really got his base of support right there, because both Democrats and Republicans sold out those union workers to ship those jobs to non-union workers overseas. And Trump, all he had to do was just occasionally refer to that fact. Now, he hasn't done anything really to rectify that at all. He really just kind of renamed NAFTA. I forget what's even called at this point. But like I think Americans are just like they're craving some sort of recognition of the harm that's going on. And I think they see that in Trump. I believe they saw that in Bernie, but they're not really seeing that like in a whole lot of other places. But I do want to say like we do have some good local candidates and even some people running for CD1 that like are talking about that. So like I don't want to be all doom and gloom. Like there is hope. But these folks are going to face a lot of opposition from the party itself. They have their chosen candidates that they want to win, who are not really that popular.
Right.
And that's the problem.
Oh yeah.
And you got to get these old people, not to be ageist, but no way to avoid it. You got to get these old people out of there. I mean, like Chuck Schumer and just people who are past their. I mean, look what they did with Dianne Feinstein. I mean, she was non-compos mentis. I mean, she was gone, and they wheeled her in. It was like Weekend at Bernie's, right? They wheeled her in to vote. I mean, and it was elder abuse what they did to her. But I mean, but that's so emblematic of the Democratic Party, and and Biden. Not to keep going back to that, but another example.
There needs to be some new blood at the top to attract people and to get them involved.
We need new blood,
especially here in New Hampshire.
Yes.
So I was just talking to a member. I'm not gonna like out them here, but they are part of a Democratic committee here in New Hampshire in like a red rural area, and like they were thinking like how do we get like like younger families involved with the party, and somebody had the idea of like, oh, what if like we have somebody like we pay like somebody's daughter or granddaughter to like watch over some like kids. We'll have like a little play area where like we'll be in the same room, but we'll be having the meeting. And the state party said legally we cannot provide childcare. Don't do it. And it's like you want new people to come in. You want like if you're talking about younger people, I know people think of like 18 and 20-year-olds, but like think about the people like.
How do you think they get people to show up at church? There's a daycare at the church. They're just volunteers.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Add in like a few like 30-year-old couples with kids to a Democratic committee meeting, and you will lower the average age.
Right.
Like you're bringing younger people in, but there seems to be like a resistance to change.
Oh yeah.
And I think again, it's because a lot of people that have power within the Democratic Party are comfortable. Like they are wealthier, they are more white, and anything that's kind of like a threat to that power. I like to joke that progressives actually pose a bigger threat to the power of the Democratic Party than Republicans do. Because if you're party chair of the New Hampshire Democratic Party and you get absolutely wiped out by Republicans in the election, well, guess what? You're still party chair. You still get to put on all these fundraisers. Yep. But if a progressive challenges you for your party seat right there, oh, you don't have the access that you did.
Right.
So a lot of it is it's self-preservation and an inability to change. It's obstinance.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, I think on that note, we should start to wrap this one up. I think it's been a really good show, and of course we'll do more of these. But and anything else we didn't mention?
I got one
Jenny,
thing to mention.
Yeah.
Yes. Check out the Union Leader tomorrow. There will be an op-ed by yours truly regarding transportation issues.
Yes. Yep. Tomorrow in the Manchester Union Leader.
Ooh, please send me a link once it's posted.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Grab a paper.
Very good. Very good. And of course, Jenny, you can people can follow all of your everything that you're doing at gencoffee.com.
GENNCOFFEY.com. Come check it out and see what kind of trouble I may or may not be getting into here or there or in DC or wherever.
And of course, people can follow me at my website, mattconnerton.com. And Brandon, for people who want to know, this has been wonderful. Thank you for joining us. And for people who want to know how to follow you, where to find you, how to keep up with everything you're doing, where should they go, and any of the organizations that you work with that you want to mention, or events coming up, or anything at all that you want to make sure our listeners and viewers know about, please.
Ooh, yeah. So you can follow me. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm currently, I'm on a permanent Twitter embargo. So I am LeMay Brandon J as in Juliet at bluesky.social. I am LeMay for Tenant on TikTok. I haven't really posted in a while, but I'm going to make a commitment to do that. If you want to learn more about the organization that I work for, Rights and Democracy, it is radmovement.org, RAD as in Delta.org. And also just want to shout out an organization that I sometimes volunteer for, which is the Mutual Aid Relief Fund, MARF NH. They are on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook as well. They do great work providing basic necessities to those who are housing insecure or specifically homeless themselves. They put on free stores all over the state giving out supplies. I recommend, if you don't know what to do, go do some mutual aid. Help your fellow person in your community.
Yeah, excellent.
Yep.
That sounds fantastic. Well, thank you, Brandon, and everyone who joined us on the live stream. Thank you, and of course, everyone else who gets this in the podcast feed. Of course, you can find the show on all of your or any of your favorite podcast feeds of choice, or you can go to mattconnerton.com and find it there as well, or on the IPM Nation YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. So, Brandon, thank you, and Jenny, thank you, and we'll talk to y'all a little bit later. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.